Hello, this video is a part 2 to the last video I made. In that video I went over the first half of the presidents, and this one will go over the second half. I'd highly encourage watching part 1 before watching this video. Jumping right into it, William McKinley. He originally opposed going into the Spanish-American War, but after insistence from citizens and the sinking of the Lusitania, he decided to join. After the war, the U.S. acquired Puerto Rico, the Philippines, and Guam. McKinley also passed the Gold Standard Act, which determined the dollar value by the weight of gold. Soon after being elected for a second term, he became the third president to be assassinated. Theodore Roosevelt. During the Spanish-American War as a colonel, he led an actual group of cowboys called the Rough Riders into the Battle of San Juan Hill and won. As president, he signed the Pure Food and Drug Act, which made food more edible, established national parks, and called for the creation of the Panama Canal. When he ran in 1912, he was shot in the chest. The bullet went through layers of clothes and some paper that he was using for notes, but still pierced his skin and would have hurt like crazy. But he continued to give a speech for another hour before getting medical attention, and even said, "I don't know whether or not you fully understand that I have just been shot, but it takes more than that to kill a bull moose." William H. Taft. He's the most overweight president we've ever had, and a lot of people know that story about him getting stuck in the bathtub. But that's likely not even true. However, less people know that actually at the end of his life, he lost about 100 pounds. Taft was an important piece in coming up with and passing the 16th Amendment, which allowed for a federal income tax. After president, he became a Supreme Court justice, being the only president to ever become one. But also, sadly, he was the last president to ever have facial hair, as of now. Woodrow Wilson. He originally said that the U.S. would not get involved in World War I, but after the conflict intensified, he decided to join. During the war, he signed the Espionage and Sedition Acts, which made it illegal to speak out against the war, violating the First Amendment. Wilson wrote the 14 Points of Peace, which were his idea of keeping peace between nations. He also passed the 19th Amendment, which allowed women to vote. Near the end of his presidency, he had a stroke, which did not kill him but left him bedridden. Supposedly, his wife, Edith, took over the responsibilities of the president. Warren G. Harding. He promised America a return to normalcy after World War I. He signed the Budget and Accounting Act, which made the president responsible for budget planning. He was also involved in the Teapot Dome scandal, which saw him transferring oversight of oil reserves from the Navy to his own department. Harding liked gambling, drinking during Prohibition, and hiring his friends who were not qualified for the jobs he hired them for. Calvin Coolidge. He was very quiet, getting him the nickname Silent Cal, but when he wanted to speak really well, he could. He once said, "There is no right to strike against the public safety by anyone, anywhere, at any time." And another time saying, "Nothing in this world can take the place of persistence." Coolidge also signed the Indian Citizenship Act, which made Native Americans legally citizens. He also had a weird habit of rubbing petroleum jelly on his forehead in the morning. And he was the only president to be born on July 4th. Herbert Hoover. During his presidency, the Great Depression started, and he didn't really do anything to try and stop it or recover from it for quite a while. Hoover thought giving people money who couldn't earn anything from the lack of jobs was a bad idea. He did eventually do a little bit to try and help near the end of his presidency, but by that point it was too little too late. Besides the Great Depression, Hoover was the only president to be able to speak Mandarin, so there's something he accomplished. Franklin D. Roosevelt. He's the only president to be elected for 4 terms. The 2-term limit was not put in yet, so he served 3 terms, but died near the very beginning of the 4th one he was elected for. He was also the only president to be paralyzed, although the public didn't really know about this. FDR started his presidency with the New Deal, which did not end the Great Depression, but it did allow a lot of relief within it. The most impactful and most important program of the New Deal was Social Security, which we still see today. Roosevelt later also had to deal with World War II. The US was in a state of isolationism, so they didn't go into the war until the attack on Pearl Harbor. After this, we joined the war, and FDR allowed internment camps to be made, which were essentially prisons for Japanese citizens, even though we had no evidence that they were spies. Harry Truman. He's responsible for dropping the atomic bomb on Japan, ending conflict of World War II. He was really not expected to win. Some newspapers even printed out stories of him losing, at the top saying, "Dewey defeats Truman." But he won. So, joke's on you, newspapers. Truman's Fair Deal raised minimum wage, expanded Social Security, and even created a national health service. Dwight D. Eisenhower. He was a very good general during World War II, winning many battles. After being elected, Eisenhower called for the creation of the interstate highway system and NASA. He also admitted Alaska and Hawaii to the United States to become states. When public schools were supposed to desegregate, the black students weren't being allowed into the building. Eisenhower, to counteract this, sent the military in to safely escort them to school. John F. Kennedy. He signed the Equal Pay Act of 1963, which stated that women and men doing the same job would get paid the same amount. JFK also expanded space exploration, and in a great speech, he set our eyes towards the moon.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
JFK went through the Bay of Pigs invasion, which was a complete disaster, but he learned later during the Cuban Missile Crisis how to handle stuff like that much better. Kennedy, when he was visiting Dallas, was shot by Lee Harvey Oswald, although many people believe that there's some sort of cover-up and maybe he wasn't the only shooter, blah blah blah. This made him the 4th president to be assassinated, and the last. Well, for now, I guess. Lyndon B. Johnson. He passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which outlawed segregation. He also signed the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which removed subtle ways to discriminate on who was voting, like poll taxes and literacy tests. Both expanded rights for black Americans. Johnson also expanded American involvement in the Vietnam War. He sent 175,000 troops in 1965, and then 100,000 more in 1966. Richard Nixon. He started the war on drugs, which was intended to lower drug use. However, drug use only went up after it, and during it, they stupidly claimed that marijuana was more dangerous than cocaine, and as dangerous as heroin. Speaking of cocaine, the punishment for having crack cocaine was a lot higher than the punishment of having powdered cocaine. Coincidentally, or as I presume and many others do, not so coincidentally, crack was more often used by black people, and powdered was more often used by white people. But Nixon is most famous for being involved in the Watergate scandal, where they had wiretapped and spied on private Democratic Party meetings. After this, not wanting to be impeached, Nixon resigned presidency, becoming the only president to do that. Gerald Ford. He's the only president from my state, Michigan. He's also the only president not to be elected. Other vice presidents who became president were elected as vice president. But Ford was not elected. He was chosen by Nixon after Agnew left. Ford also controversially pardoned Richard Nixon for the crimes he could have been charged with after Watergate. He also pulled out the troops from Vietnam. Jimmy Carter. He pardoned any and all people who evaded being drafted during the Vietnam War. Carter also led a foreign policy that was based on keeping peace. 2 examples are the Camp David Awards, which made peace between Egypt and Israel, and the Panama Canal Treaties, which transferred power of the Panama Canal. He continued to do humanitarian work after leaving office, including the creation of the Carter Center, which won him a Nobel Prize. He lived the longest of any president, making it all the way to 100 years old. Ronald Reagan. He is known for his amazing skills of speech and his chipper attitude. With just his speaking skills, he was able to get the Berlin Wall down.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
And he kept his humor even in desperate times, one example being when he was shot. As the doctors were rushing to help him, he said, "I hope you're all Republicans." Reagan is also famous for his economic policy called Reaganomics. The policy called for tax cuts and increased spending to the military. Inflation went down, but the national debt went up, and the space between economic classes also went up. George H.W. Bush. He signed the Americans with Disabilities Act, which made it illegal to discriminate people with disabilities in employment or public accommodations. Bush called for an end to the Cold War, which had gone on for far too long. Now, it didn't end just because of him, but he played a factor in not wanting it to be prolonged. Also, Bush really didn't like vegetables, apparently, according to this clip.
I do not like broccoli, and I haven't liked it since I was a little kid. And my mother made me eat it. And I'm president of the United States, and I'm not going to eat any more broccoli.
Bill Clinton. He passed the creation of the North American Free Trade Agreement, which created the largest free trade zone in the world. Also, under the Clinton administration, 22 million new jobs were created. He's also one heck of a saxophone player. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Oh, the scandal. Clinton partook in relationship with White House intern Monica Lewinsky, who was 27 years younger than him. That would have been bad enough, but Clinton was also married at this time. He claims he didn't do it, but come on, we all know he did. George W. Bush. He had to respond to the attack on the World Trade Center by Al-Qaeda on September 11th. Bush sent troops to Iraq to try and destroy Al-Qaeda and track down Osama bin Laden. Bush also signed the No Child Left Behind Act, which aimed to improve academics for students, but in reality put too much focus on standardized testing and made an overly narrow curriculum. Barack Obama. He signed the Hate Crimes Prevention Act, which made hate crimes easier to prosecute, and the Affordable Care Act, which increased the benefits and accessibility of healthcare. He also raised the minimum wage. Obama openly supported gay marriage, which helped it to become completely legal. Obama also used drone strikes a lot more, 10 times the amount that George W. Bush did. Donald Trump. He signed the Hatch Bob Good Latte Music Modernization Act, which ensured that musicians would get paid from streaming. Trump claimed that the outcome of the 2020 election was false and hyped people up so much that it led to the January 6th Capitol attacks. The second time he was elected, he became the oldest president, beating out Joe Biden by less than 200 days. He's also the richest president we've had, even adjusting for inflation. And he kind of renamed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America for some reason. Joe Biden. He got the troops out of Afghanistan. Now, it didn't go very well, but I mean, at least he tried. Biden also passed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which improved public safety and created jobs. And the Respect for Marriage Act, which aimed to protect the right to marry anyone without judgment or discrimination. Biden nearly ran in the 2024 election, but surprisingly stepped out somewhat late into the election. Ho! And that is all the presidents. Finally, we made it. I really hope you enjoyed the video. Please consider subscribing or liking if you did enjoy it. And that's all I have for you. Bye!